Okay, 5 minutes. Here we go. A lot of people now, since my accident happened 2 years ago now, ask me about depression. For obvious reasons, it's clear that I've struggled with depression at different points in my life. And now I think because of what I've gone through, some people think that I might have some insight into depression. And so I find that I'm asked about it quite regularly by different people, friends, even people I don't know that message me and, maybe invite me on a podcast or something to talk about depression or, you know, things related to depression. But come on, move. Meow Meow's not depressed. But the funny thing is that I feel like I don't have any particular deep personal insight into that topic. I don't think in the way that a lot of people think I might, because even though I've had depression or I've struggled with it or I've had experiences of depression, episodes of depression, I don't really understand it. I don't have a deep insight into that specifically. I have some ideas, I have some opinions, which I guess, I thought today's post I would share about those ideas, those opinions. But I just want to say that I don't think that my ideas, my opinions on depression are necessarily right for anybody else. Might not even be right for me. They're just, you have an experience and you have a way of thinking about it. I have an experience, I have a way of thinking about it. And so that's what I can share, but I definitely don't assume that these ideas necessarily apply to anybody else. Yeah. So if I'm really pried on the topic and somebody really wants to know what I think, which I want to say that I feel like I've had this experience now where many people have asked me about what I think about depression, or specifically, it'll be something like, what would you say to somebody who's dealing with depression or ideation? What would you do? What would you say, having gone through these things yourself? Um, and then I have something that I will share, some ideas. It's not necessarily this is exactly what you do and here's the answer, but I do have something to say about it. And a lot of times what I feel like is when I say these things, when I say what I think, people aren't necessarily that receptive to it. It's not usually the thing that I think people want to hear, which I totally get because I think that's just the way it is for all of us, including myself. And I have an antidote. I think that's what it's called, an antidote about that from my own personal experience. I have a bit of a cough. And when that happens, it's a frustration feeling within me because I will feel frustrated if somebody asks me what they think about this or what my advice might be on the topic. And then when I give it, feel like, well, that's not what we wanted to hear. Okay. I mean, I, uh, that's a pretty strange thing, but you'd be surprised if you're somebody watching this, how often that actually happens to me. Because I think a lot of the times people don't really want to hear what you think. They hope that you say something back that they're waiting to hear that they've already sort of subconsciously decided on, if that makes sense, right? Like, so that was my 5 minutes, but we're going to go way over 5 minutes today because I think this is a good thing for me to try to capture because I have this conversation with people a lot and I just want to kind of encapsulate this in my YouTube today for future reference by myself or others. So here's something that happened to me when I was really starting to struggle with my emotional health, my, we'll say mental well being, but I think it's more like an emotional health. Well, we can call it depression, but let's just say I was struggling emotionally and it was becoming very difficult. It felt very difficult for me. I just didn't know what to do. At that time that things were kind of escalating, I was in Bali and I knew that I needed some help or I wanted some help. I wanted some insight on what to do. What do I do? I'm struggling with some decisions and all these things, and it's like emotionally heavy, and I'm not really sure what to do. So while I was there, I reached out to somebody that had just like the thinnest thread of a connection with. This person was a kind of like a life coach. But I reached out to this person, asked them if they'd be willing to meet up with me for a lunch and give me some advice, which the person did, met up with me. Um, I laid out my issues, and that person kindly reminded me that, well, this is their business. They're a life coach. They don't necessarily do consulting for free. Fair enough. But the one thing that the person said to me at that time was basically that I wasn't allowing, and I wasn't in my own worthiness. Now, neither of these things landed in me. I really just didn't feel like whatever those two things were relevant at all to what I was explaining, the struggle that I was going through. It didn't feel relevant at all, honestly. I was confused. It was like, I mean, that doesn't really make sense to me because, I've explained I'm trying to make decisions. And I think the problem is that in that situation, I'm not able to like articulate it, and I don't think other people are, but I'm actually meeting up with this person and hoping that they can make decisions for me. Like, I'm hoping that they can tell me specifically what to do in my life. And they can't do that. So I'm not going to hear what I want to hear. And then the thing that I'm hearing, something about allowing, worthiness. What? What does that mean? Now, years later, many years later, looking back though, I see that that was true. I couldn't see it then, but I see now that that was true, especially the part about allowing. And here's why. For me, and I think this applies to many people, many of the times, who are struggling in their lives with depression or emotional well being or just decision making. But for me at the time, now I realize that, yeah, I wasn't really allowing myself to be honest with myself about what I really wanted to be doing and what I wasn't really happy with in my life at the time. And I wasn't allowing myself to be really clear on the things I wanted to change and the things that I wanted to do because I was afraid of change, afraid of facing the reality that things weren't necessarily the way I wanted them to be, afraid of facing the way that I want things to be and the person that I want to be. I wasn't allowing myself to fully embrace the fullness of who I am. I've told people that at the time I think I was really, really deep in this game of trying to become a version of myself that others would appreciate, but that then would allow me to appreciate myself. I'm going to be this like yoga person. I'm going to be like so good and so chill and so peaceful. And then people are going to see I'm a good person and they're going to like me. And then I'm going to see that I really am a good person because I think I'm a good person. But the truth is that deep down inside that, I'm in conflict because I don't actually believe it because I'm not really allowing myself to embrace the fullness of who I am, which is much more than just like a yoga person. I mean, I don't think any of those things weren't true that I was doing. I did enjoy yoga. I do enjoy yoga. I do love the philosophy of yoga, meditation, all the spiritual practices. I'm into it. I still am. But I'm not that person necessarily. Beads, a robe. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like, I don't have to be, I didn't have to be, and I don't have to be that person with that look, and I don't have to be that way all the time for other people, and especially not for myself. But I think I was like really confused about all those things. And it's much more than that, but you know, I suspect, and again, I'm not saying that it applies to everybody's situation all the time, but I suspect that a lot of people that are struggling with their emotional health, struggling with depression, ideation, I suspect that a lot of people are really also not allowing, not living into their worthiness, and not allowing something to be that they want to let be, but can't or don't think they can because they're not allowing themselves to be honest with what's really going on or their true feelings about things or their awareness of something that might need to change, that they're just not allowing, things to happen the way that they're afraid probably needs to happen. And when I say that to people who are asking me for my insight in depression, 9 times out of 10, 9.5 times out of 10, it's just like a, mm, mm, I don't know about that. Okay, well, okay, well, maybe. Again, maybe not, you know, maybe not. But what do I know? You know, who am I? Well, I I don't have any insight. I don't have any wisdom to share. I don't have any. I'm not a guru. I'm not a coach. I'm not a teacher. I'm not. So, you know, I'm just somebody who has had a lot of experiences. Um, and if somebody asks me about depression, ideation, mental health, emotional well being, I happen to have a lot of experiences around these things. And because of that, I have some things I could talk about. But I don't know, it's interesting. And I'm kind of curious if there are other people out there who feel the same, when it comes to this. I find that, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but I find that there are people, and I've talked to certain people who have very strong ideas about what to do about depression, what to do about mental health, who don't seem to have actually experienced it or gone through these situations that much. That's very interesting to me. You know, this is the same thing that happens in about every category of anything, right? There's always some yoga teacher that is an expert in flexibility, but they were never not flexible in their whole life. There's always some fitness person that's an expert in how to lose weight, and they were never fat. Um, and then people are apprehensive. Well, I'm not going to ask, like, I'm not going to ask a white guy who learned Chinese what they think about learning Chinese, even though that's the person who went through the experience of learning Chinese. No, I want to ask somebody who already has all the things that I want. Anyways, so not to go off on a side rant on that, but I'm just trying to use the metaphors and the different examples to tell a story, to paint a picture about these things, because you know I look around and I see that I always have a lot of friends and know a lot of people who are going through difficulties, going through challenges, emotionally in their life, either physically, mentally. It's always a difference. It's a huge spectrum, and no one thing applies to everybody or any one person. But I think it's interesting that a lot of us, and I include myself in this too, are just less open to hearing different perspectives than we think we are. We want a solution, but most of the time the solution is the solution that we want to hear, right? This is sort of like in my work, like design clients who, I want to see your creative solution, but way back in the back, they actually already know what they want. They're waiting for you to show it to them. They don't want to see your solution. They want you to reflect back the solution that they already have, that they just haven't put any effort into articulating. That's that story's been around since I started working in design, since I was 15 years old. That's when I started doing design. You don't believe it? It's true. So it's the same across all the different categories of topics and sorry. And it's true in this topic as well, I think. Mental health, mental well-being, emotional health. I think it's similar. And okay, so that's the way it is. But anyways, I think that's it. That's what I wanted to say about it. And now, I have something that I've captured, about how I feel about it that, I could send to somebody next time they ask me about what I think. So thanks for listening. I hope that was comprehensible. And yeah, let's see, what's today here? Happy Sunday.